bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Tonight, Eye on America. This trauma nurse wants to join the military, so why was she rejected?
I believe in our country, and I want to serve it.
Then back to school deals to save you money. Tonight on the CBS Evening News.
Soft landing, my policies are working, start writing that way.
Politicians come into places like Michigan, they say nice things, but they crush our industries, they offshore our jobs, and they undercut American wages.
All negotiators should return to the table and bring this deal to conclusion. It is far time for the remaining hostages to be released.
Hello, I'm Ed O'Keefe in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Harris are both homing in on the economy this week. Trump is speaking in North Carolina, explaining why he thinks the administration's to blame for high prices. Harris plans to roll out a major economic plan in the same state on Friday. Inflation cooled in July, falling to its lowest level in 3 years. In response to the report, the Trump campaign's blaming, quote, Kamalanomics for rising costs. Also new today, CBS News has offered 4 dates to Tim Walz and J.D. Vance to debate. Walz confirms he's in, saying on social media a short time ago, see you on October 1, J.D. We'll see if they all show up. Robert Costa and Weijia Zhang join us now. They'll be there whenever the CBS News vice presidential debate happens. Robert, of course, chief elections and campaign correspondent. Weijia holding things down over at the White House, senior White House correspondent. Weijia, the different views on the economy from Trump and Harris and how they would run things should they win. What do we make of what we've learned from Trump today and what we think we may learn from Harris later this week?
Well, and right now what we're seeing is really just the blaming of the other candidate, because neither one has offered any detailed economic policy proposals, which we are anticipating from Vice President Harris on Friday when she delivers a speech in North Carolina. But the same goes for Trump. He's really trying to go after Harris on what he claims she has not done. And so he says that she has not been able to work with the Biden administration to really move the needle on rising prices, that they were not able to tackle inflation until today. There was some progress finally on that front. And then Harris sent out, many notes to her supporters reminding them that when Trump left office, there was a hemorrhaging of jobs, that, many Americans were out of work, that he lost 839,000 total energy jobs. The list goes on. The irony here, Ed, is that the source of both of their complaints is the pandemic. And that really caused a lot of the supply chain issues. It caused, of course, businesses to close down. And so we're still in a phase of having to rebuild from that. And that is the question still, what each candidate plans to do if they were to come into office. Now, there are little nuggets that they've shared. For example, we've talked a lot about eliminating taxes on tips. The vice president and her running mate have talked about social infrastructure, paid family leave, medical leave, things like that. The former president, I should say, Donald Trump, has said that he wants to slash energy and electricity prices by more than half. But again, we don't have the nitty-gritty details, Ed, that makes all of these policies actually work.
Bob, no matter how low inflation rates fall, now we're below 3% for the first time since 2021, there are many Americans who still feel the economy is bad. And that continues to be to the advantage of Trump, right?
Inflation's always at the forefront of voters' minds. We've encountered that on the campaign trail over the past year. What's notable to me is that the labor vote is really a target for both campaigns at this moment. Those union workers in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and elsewhere who might be feeling that inflationary pain and also might have some hostility towards American trade policy and how it's handled American manufacturing in recent decades. And while President Biden has made inroads because of his long relationship with labor during his presidency, you see Vice President Harris echoing a lot of his own positions. But they know at the Harris campaign that Trump, with his position on immigration, has made a real overture to those same voters. And you're seeing now this focus on the economy that's unsurprising in the late summer, and it's going to kick up in the fall.
Weijia, the Trump campaign, the former president himself, continues to accuse Harris of stealing his idea to eliminate taxes on tips. I think we have some sound of this. Why don't we listen to him say this first? Go ahead.
Kamala Harris won't end the economic crisis. She will only make it worse. And why hasn't she done it? She talks about it. She's doing a plan. You know, she's going to announce it this week, maybe. She's waiting for me to announce it so she can copy it.
Why do both campaigns think that this policy is the right move?
Well, to be frank, Ed, this policy would really impact voters in Nevada. And Nevada is a critical battleground state that they are both trying to win. You're talking about people whose main source of income come from tips in the service industry, in the restaurant industry. And so politically speaking, it's smart for them to talk about why they think this would work. There are a lot of challenges to this. Experts already weighing in saying if this were to be implemented, it would really impact the deficit, make it grow even more. And Ed, I just want to peel back the curtain a little for our viewers, because you and I were talking about this, how we can offer context to our viewers as we talk about this policy idea. And you so rightly mentioned that this is not an original idea of Trump's. Other politicians have talked about it before. It just so happened that he endorsed it and then she followed. But, it's still, the question of what each of these candidates is going to do with their original ideas. There aren't really that many original ideas, but they're ideas that need to be tweaked to match the social climate, to match what's happening in our current economy. And I think that's what you're seeing here with both candidates focusing on this, Ed.
Weijia bringing the texts and emails alive here on America Decides. Thank you for calling out that context. We know, Bob, the president and the vice president making their first joint public appearance together tomorrow in suburban Washington. You spoke with the president over the weekend about his plans to campaign this fall. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Yeah, I was talking to Governor Shapiro, who's a friend. We have to win Pennsylvania, my original home state. He and I are putting together a campaign tour in Pennsylvania. I'm going to be campaigning in other states as well. And I'm going to do whatever Kamala thinks I can do to help most.
So the Joe and Josh Buddy Tour will eventually get around to the Keystone State, but do we have any sense beyond Pennsylvania where he's planning to go and to what extent the Harris campaign even wants to use him out on the road?
To build on what I was saying in my previous answer, you're going to see that focus on labor from President Biden, just like you saw from Governor Walz this week in Los Angeles. President Biden, born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, has these roots in the Philadelphia region, the First Lady with her own roots in the area. And so Pennsylvania remains the state. Every time I talk to the Trump and the Biden campaigns, Pennsylvania comes up. Yeah. Because it's hard to come up with a map that wins you the White House if you're not winning Pennsylvania. Now, maybe you can surprise as a Democrat and win a score of states in the South and the Southwest and maybe add Florida to the mix. But that's kind of a bank shot to the White House. Pennsylvania, the most straightforward way to win the presidency. And there's a thought in both campaigns that if you're winning Pennsylvania, you're likely doing very well in Michigan, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, and other states. And Georgia, though, is the other place I think you're going to see President Biden. Talking to the Biden people in recent days, his relationship with black Democrats, look at South Carolina, lifted him in the 2020 race with the Clyburn endorsement. He is going to go back to his labor roots, back to his roots with traditional Democrats, and go to places like the Deep South as well, beyond Pennsylvania, to make sure that Democrats can keep Georgia in play like they did in 2020.
Yeah, well, the bus tour of Pennsylvania that Harris and Walz are doing this weekend is one thing. The bus tour that the president does at some point will be a sight.
Maybe an Amtrak tour, Ed.
Fair enough. He has not been on a train recently. It would be a good excuse to be on one. Robert Costa here. Weijia Zhang over at the White House. Thank you both. And a quick programming note. Join us next week starting Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern for special America Decides coverage of the Democratic National Convention live from Chicago. Negotiations to reach a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas are resuming tomorrow in Qatar, but one of those parties says it will not be present during the discussions. We'll have more on that next. Stay with us. You're streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I use sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
The Biden administration is currently preparing for a potential attack on Israel by Iran and its proxies. Meanwhile, tomorrow, officials from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar will restart negotiations for a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel's sending a delegation to the talks, but a representative for Hamas says the militant group will not be participating. Margaret Brennan joins us now. She is CBS News' chief foreign affairs correspondent and moderator of Face the Nation, program you should watch on Sundays. Good to see you. What is the latest we know about this potential attack on Israel by either Iran or its proxies or both?
Or both. Well, or both is the question here, Ed. What we know is that Hezbollah, which is based in the north, in Lebanon, could launch an attack with little to no warning. They, however, according to U.S. officials I've spoken with, want to coordinate with Iran. And Iran, in the U.S. assessment, is waiting. And that there isn't an expectation that they will act in the next few days. Now, things can change. However, the assessment is that we will be probably on hold until the weekend. But there's infighting within Iran that is being monitored. They don't know yet how they want to respond to this. So in the absence of that decision, the U.S. is doing everything they can to delay. The president sent his top Mideast advisors, Brett McGurk, to Egypt, Amos Hochstein, an envoy to Lebanon, where the United States is getting messages through to Hezbollah. And the CIA director is going to Doha tomorrow. The Secretary of State remains here in the U.S., but we saw earlier today he was on the phone speaking to the Prime Minister of Qatar, which is very much trying to be a peacemaker here. The idea being if you get a ceasefire in Gaza, it lowers the tensions. It gives Iran an excuse to step back and say, oh, well, there's progress, and Hezbollah may still want to retaliate, but has less of an incentive to do so.
I mean, we're so consumed by American politics, we forget that there's a new president in Iran anyway. So that's part of what this is that he's still trying to get his bearings.
That's exactly right. The supreme leader is the man who really runs the country, of course, over it all, but is allowing, according to the officials I speak with, this infighting to play out. The new president, I'm told, is supposed to meet with his cabinet, I believe, this Friday, and there's the expectation that they won't take action before that.
In the midst of all of this, there's been word of about a $20 billion authorization in sales of F-15s and other equipment to Israel, but that's something that's not showing up in Israel until 2026 at the earliest. So remind us, and so that's future looking. Remind us what else the U.S. then is doing to help Israel now in the event that something happens in the coming days.
Well, those deliveries are, the State Department has to sign off, and Congress was authorized. That's going to go. But like you just said, the deliveries are between 2026 and 2029. But in the immediate term, the United States remains the chief weapons supplier to the state of Israel. That has not changed at any point in this conflict. What is interesting is in the past few days, what the United States is doing to back Israel up. And that is the point at which the United States would have to step in to back up Israel if their defenses were overwhelmed. That is the expectation. So to try to prevent the attack from escalating to that level, to essentially starting a war that Israel could not finish on its own without American help, the U.S. has been surging assets to the regions. That's F-22 fighter jets, F-35s, carrier strike groups, ships that can fire missiles, trying to say through this muscular posture, as President Biden likes to say, just don't.
Right.
That's why they're sending assets there. They're not intending to use all of them. If there is an April-style attack from Iran, from the east, the United States is expected to try to help intercept some of those. That big question mark is what happens with Lebanese Hezbollah, because that is something that could overwhelm the United States if there's a Israel, if there is a multi-access attack.
So based on all your conversations with people here and over there, how hopeful are they, how realistic are they about a potential truce?
At this point, President Biden is surging diplomats to try to stop a regional conflict. That's the thing we've been on edge about since October. Imagine just how horrifically bloody that war in Gaza is, and then amplify it around the region. That's what they're trying to prevent from happening. So that's where they are, and just trying to delay or stop a regional war. In terms of the potential ceasefire in the 25 miles that is the Gaza Strip, there is hope that the United States will show up with a bridging proposal. That is the CIA director arriving with a piece of paper that says, here's how I get both of you to yes, here's the incentives, and puts that on the table. It's being described as a final bridging proposal. This is the same deal that's been floating around since May that President Biden got up and spoke to the American people about. This is trying to get them to yes. And there has been deep skepticism that the Israeli prime minister wants to get to yes. You've heard it from some of the hostage families themselves. He just assassinated the political negotiator who was part of this, the leader of Hamas on the political side. And then on Hamas's front, there's deep doubt that Yahya Sinwar, the man who actually matters, the architect of that bloody, horrific attack, actually would give up his greatest leverage. And that is those human beings he is holding hostage and has been since October the 7th.
And just imagine if President Biden were still running for re-election and trying to orchestrate all this at the same time.
4 days before the Democratic National Convention starts a ceasefire negotiation. And let's be clear, all of this has political ramifications here in the United States. And we saw hostage families get up on that stage at the RNC and appeal. But they don't want the politics to be an impediment. They just want their loved ones home.
Right. And as far as we know, as of now, at least, none of them are set to speak in Chicago at the Democratic Convention, although we'll see. Yeah. Margaret Brennan, great to see you as always. Thank you for being here. It has been 13 days since Paul Whelan returned to the U.S. from Russia under a major prisoner exchange. The man who has served as his attorney throughout his wrongful imprisonment will join us to discuss his release. You're streaming America Decides.
On our places. bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case. It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
It's been just under 2 weeks since Paul Whelan and others returned to the United States from Russia after a historic multi-nation prisoner swap. Whelan's attorney Ryan Fayhee is here with me now in our D.C. studio to discuss the Marine veterans' release and much more. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. First of all, how is Paul doing?
Paul's doing great, and at least as well as can be expected. Mm-hmm. He's proud of what his country's done for him and bringing him home. He's reacclimating. Reconnecting with his family and some old Marine friends, and making sure that his health is in good order before he returns to the great state of Michigan. So he's still in Texas? He's still in Texas. Okay. So he was imprisoned for more than 5 years, and we know from news reports that occasionally reporters would hear from him. How often were you and his family in touch? Well, his family and him, in particular his mother and father, and he were in touch almost every day. He did have the opportunity over the years to speak with him. Once he was out of Fort Devo and out into this miserable labor camp, they did have that opportunity to connect. I only connected with him actually one time by happenstance alongside the Special Envoy for Hostage Affairs, Roger Carstens, who I happened to be sitting next to when Paul called. That was really by design, because I had been making my way around the city alongside his family and advocating for Paul. I had a lot of sensitive information and how I thought the case may be resolved, and I really didn't want to share that with the Russians over a phone call with Paul. Because they would have been monitoring it, obviously. Of course. Yeah. Now, Roger Carstens, obviously one of those U.S. officials you would have been dealing with on a regular basis. How frequently would you have been in touch with other U.S. officials on this case? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it every few weeks? Well, Well, it was a long road, 5.5 years. So this is a small city, and it was important to work this on every angle, everything from the halls of the U.S. Congress alongside his family. But ultimately, the State Department, the contact was very frequent. There's a lot of family support in Roger Karsten's office, something that's had a tremendous amount of growth over the course of the past 5.5 years. But ultimately, there was a small group of people that helped to resolve the case. The president was invested, for sure. He'd met with Elizabeth, I think, 2 times in the Oval Office to great effect.
His sister, yeah.
Paul's sister, Elizabeth, that's right. And then the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, took this as a point of personal intention and pride to get it resolved. And the interactions with the family in particular were very frequent.
Now, you have dealt with other cases of wrongfully detained Americans in the past. 2 questions off that. First, how does an attorney like you fall into these kinds of cases? Like, is that a specialty that you guys develop, or does it just kind of happen? And how do you distinguish the difference in Paul's case versus the many others around the world, especially people who've been held for several years, whether it's in Russia or in other countries?
So I was a longtime Department of Justice national security prosecutor, and in search of a pro bono case that would align with my experience and my knowledge of Washington, D.C. And so when Paul was first arrested, there were a lot of questions around the circumstances of his arrest and whether he was a spy and a variety of other, I thought, quite unfair questions. I thought the only thing I had seen was that an American citizen was detained in Russia, and it seemed to be unfairly. And so ultimately, this was the first of many cases that would come. I was very happy to have found a pro bono project that was very meaningful to me. And I learned a ton from this family and making our way around town. And one of the silver linings of Paul's case is that it's positioned me and many others to be better advocates on behalf of families of those that have been taken hostage and being wrongfully detained.
So what distinguished his case then versus all these others? The fact that he's a Marine, the fact that it was 5.5 years?
There's 2 things that I think distinguish Paul's case. I mean, first and foremost, Russia is unique in today's environment, and their willingness to engage in just transparent hostage diplomacy. It was thinly veiled and obvious from the get-go that that's, what was at play here. And obviously we saw, all of us, the American public saw Paul being exploited and re-exploited time and again as people came home. Really, well, he stayed. That was very intentional. So that was first. Second, over the course of that 5.5 years, the hostage enterprise, as I'll call it, here in Washington, D.C., has really grown and evolved in very meaningful and I would argue helpful ways. There's more work to be done, but a lot of lessons learned from Paul's case. And my hope is, moving forward, that the U.S. government's going to put an intentional focus on deterrence and to developing a system of deterrence.
Well, that was my next question, is sort of what should be done to, I mean, the president, for example, says, well, don't go to these dangerous countries if the State Department's issuing travel warnings. That's only going to work sometimes. I mean, what else can be done to deter people from ending up in these situations?
So there is some low-hanging fruit. It's a very, very challenging problem, but there is some low-hanging fruit. First, education. Certainly educating the public in every opportunity possible around the dangers of traveling to Russia, Iran, Syria, and so on. So education for sure. Second, the State Department really needs to impose some escalation procedures. Oftentimes, as is Paul's case, when someone's arrested in that first 24 to 48 hours, there are key indicators that it's a wrongful detention situation. That's got to be escalated up to the very highest levels of the U.S. government to try to resolve it in those early days so that we don't wait months and months and months to find ways to make an American citizen into a pawn. So that's key. And then ultimately, I think there has to be a broader multilateral strategy. I was a sanctions prosecutor. I'm now a sanctions practitioner in private practice. And so those tools that are available to further the U.S. foreign policy and national security interests need to be applied, in my view, in this context. But the U.S. can't do it alone. They've got to bring the broader community around to make sure that the costs of detaining an American citizen far outweigh the value of holding on to them.
A lot of work to be done, but a lot of work done and lessons learned, as you said, from this case. Ryan Fayhee, great to meet you. Thanks for being here, and our best to Paul and his family.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This week on the campaign trail, it's all about the economy, what Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump want you to hear about their plans to tackle high costs. We'll get into that next. Stay with us. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Former President Donald Trump is laying out his vision for the economy in a speech in North Carolina. He criticized Vice President Harris's approach to rising prices.
Kamala has declared that tackling inflation will be a day one priority. Think of it, for her, but day one for Kamala was 3.5 years ago. Why hasn't she done it?
Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now from Asheville, North Carolina, where Trump has wrapped up. Caitlin, good to see you. What is he talking about in terms of trying to lower costs for Americans?
And it's good to see you. He just wrapped up that speech, as you mentioned. And what was notable about it is he is talking about the economy in a nostalgic way, trying to get voters to remember how the economy was, how they felt the economy was under his presidency. So he named a few items today, as you can see on the signs behind me, perhaps. No federal tax on Social Security, no federal tax on tips for service workers. He also talked about slashing energy costs, but this was light on specifics and more about kind of the general feelings about the economy. And Ed, it's important to note that while polls show this race really tightening, we've seen a significant change in this race since Kamala Harris took over the top of the ticket on the Democratic side. One thing has remained the same, and that is Trump's perceived advantage on the economy. Voters continue to tell us in our own polling that they believe they'll be better off financially if Trump wins this race. So this was an effort to really capitalize on that advantage, as he's been experiencing other weak spots over the past several weeks. We'll see if that resonates with voters, and especially since Kamala Harris is expected to come here to North Carolina on Friday to make her economic pitch.
And as Caitlin speaks through the 1982 hit Gloria, Caitlin, he talked about the economy. The bunting speaks to the economy, but that entire speech was not about the economy, right? There were still some personal attacks levied.
Oh, yes. He, actually started this speech on a little bit of a rant, lamenting the fact that Joe Biden had gotten out of the race, lamenting the fact that he had spent his campaign, essentially had spent $100 million, in his words, going after Joe Biden, only for him to drop out of the race, and he's no longer the opponent. He also lamented the fact that Kamala Harris is on the cover of Time magazine last week, and you and I both know, covering Trump for these past several years, that is a very important item for him. This is all part of an effort that the campaign wants him to focus on things that they believe this election hinges on: the economy, the border, and Kamala Harris's record. He did that throughout this speech, but he really can't help himself. He went on several different kinds of tangents, often went off teleprompter. And this was, for all purposes, a campaign rally, billed as an economic speech, but really a campaign rally. And it's notable, too, Ed, that we're still indoors. It's 1 month since the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. So this is a kind of smaller venue than he has been accustomed to. But notable that he's campaigning in North Carolina. This is a battleground state, but of all the states he won in 2020, this is the slimmest of margins. So at this stage in the game, campaigning here, while Kamala Harris is also campaigning here, shows that this is an important state.
And not to stoke his fury, but that's a smaller venue, which means a smaller crowd, which will only agitate him even more conceivably in the coming days. We'll see. Caitlin Huey-Burns, the music is over. So is your report, but we're grateful for it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Just in time.
Just in time. Don't you love how it happens that way? All right, take care. Sophia Kai and Finn Gomez are here in the newsroom where we don't play music. Sophia is a national politics reporter at Axios. Finn, of course, is CBS News political director. Good to see both of you. You fans of that song?
I would love some Bad Bunny, Ed. I think you and I would probably prefer
if
that
they
a
ever
little
play
more.
Bad Bunny at a Donald Trump rally, it's all over.
But maybe on America Decides.
Maybe. Let's start with you, actually. This invitation to debate. We know now that Tim Walz has said he's good with October 1st. That was one of the dates put forward. Yeah. Have we heard anything from J.D. Vance yet?
There are four the dates that CBS News has offered for this vice presidential debate. And you are correct that Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota and VP nominee for the Democratic Party, has agreed to one of those debates, October 1st. We've engaged with both campaigns, and they both are aware of those dates. And the other details in our statement, which include the location, which is again New York City.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We eagerly await a response from Vance and from the Republicans. Sophia, back to this speech that the former president was giving today. You've described this as or you're reporting that it's kind of a break glass moment for the former president. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, look, former President Trump is in a pretty bad position, right? Like the things that keep him happy, good poll numbers, crowd sizes, he doesn't have any of that right now. And he's also running against someone who's in the center of pop culture, someone who has that kind of attention-grabbing persona, and that makes him very uncomfortable. And this week, finally, he's decided he has to do a lot of things different. After saying at Mar-a-Lago that he would not rally until after the DNC, he's announced several rallies, including today in North Carolina, later in Pennsylvania. His PAC is spending $100 million. He brought on a senior advisor, Taylor Budowich, from the PAC. I mean, these are things that are very different. He's having a 2-hour chat with Elon Musk, right? That is what I mean by a break the glass moment for former President Trump.
Yeah. It is telling that he no longer has the riz, as the kids might say.
Yep.
And it's definitely on Harris's side at this point. And the fact that, you're right, the 2-hour chat, the economic policy speech, the rally on Saturday, Vance is still out there. They're clearly trying something different now because they're seeing what we're seeing. And our friends at the Cook Political Report this morning released a bunch of new surveys also now suggesting that they're basically tied, effectively tied, or Harris has a slight edge in most of the battleground states. This has to be concerning for them down in Florida.
Well, you've seen this shift that's happened in the last couple of weeks, Ed. I mean, and this, I think, is one of the most telling ones of the battleground state map that we were seeing of those 7 battleground states. Nevada being the only one where Trump still leads. I think it's a +5 there in Nevada. Yeah, I think speaking to folks close to the Trump campaign, they have told me there's some concern with the trajectory, especially in those states. However, and also with the messaging of the campaign overall, they do feel that, as CHB reported, the more Trump focuses on the issues, more he focuses on immigration, the more he focuses on the economy, inflation, and sort of framing Vice President Harris as representative of the Biden administration and really tying that in instead of sort of more the personal attacks. They want more. The people I've been talking to, the sources I've been talking to, they want more of that. They think that's the winning formula, and this current path is not one that they believe will be successful.
Did you get a sense that he was really hoping to run against Biden because it meant he could campaign at a lower gear?
Absolutely.
And now he's got to ramp it up again in a way that he just didn't expect to?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, look, they were hoping that the debate would damage Biden just enough that it would be really bad for the Democratic nominee, but not bad enough that it would kick him out.
Right.
And I think the speed at which the Biden-Harris switch happened really took the Trump team by surprise. And that's something that for weeks they've had to respond to.
I mean, I would just note that I think it's because it's been such a different strategy now that they have had to pivot, and I think they haven't acclimated in that pivot strategically or in any other form, frankly, in that sense. But I do think that you are seeing the Trump campaign ramp up. You see, frankly, a little more disciplined Trump. You did see that today in North Carolina, and he's adding a lot more events to his upcoming schedule, where he's going to be barnstorming more of those across the battleground states. I don't know if that changes. I don't know if that, to your question, Ed, I don't know if that dynamic has really shifted that much. It's just the fact that it's a pivot to a totally different new candidate, right?
And a new map as well.
And a new map, the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt
he has to go to places like North Carolina and Arizona and Nevada. And yet, there's concerns, as expressed by Nikki Haley in this clip, about how exactly he should be spending his time. Take a look. Well, she's saying, keep focused on the policy.
Yep.
Stop focusing on Harris's crowd size. Stop focusing on personal attacks on her. Not unlike Kevin McCarthy making the same point. Others.
Right.
But others were rooting for Trump.
And so complaining about it.
Quit complaining about
the
Time Magazine.
crowd size or the race, or if she's, or
so he did both today, it sounds like. He leveled his gripes on her at the beginning, and then he got into the economic stuff. He's kind of sort of listening, but he's not quite there yet.
I mean, he'll always do everything all at once. I think he's not necessarily saying, oh, today let me see what Nikki Haley thinks I should be doing. He's always been the person to determine his own messaging. I think from the very outset, his most senior campaign advisors have always been resigned to the fact that Trump will be his own political messenger.
Yeah.
And today, what we heard from Nikki Haley was, look, Harris is someone who is talking about the future, talking about freedom, and that's what Trump should be doing.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Sophia Kai, Finn Gomez, thank you both for being here and for sharing your reporting. We appreciate it. Abortion will be on the ballot in Arizona this November. We'll get reaction from that state's Secretary of State now that the issue is up to the voters. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss
Witness true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This fall, Arizona is one of at least 8 states in which voters will decide the future of abortion access. Just today, an Arizona court ruled that a fetus can be referred to as a, quote, unborn human being on an informational pamphlet being provided to voters about the ballot measure. Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes joins me now from Phoenix. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being with us. The coalition supporting the abortion ballot measure has condemned this ruling, calling the description for a fetus, quote, biased and politically charged. Do you agree with them?
Well, as an official who is going to be running the campaign, I'd say I'm going to remain neutral. But as an elected Democrat in Arizona, not in my official capacity, I do agree with them. It's not really sensible. The lower courts had made that clear, and it's unfortunate, but we will put the language that the courts oblige us to put on the publicity pamphlet, and we will move forward through the campaign.
This is a pamphlet that's being mailed to people or that they can pick up at a public library? What exactly is it?
So in Arizona, there is a state law that a publicity pamphlet is mailed to every address where a registered voter resides, one or more. Yep. So if you've got 3 people in the house, you get one publicity pamphlet. It has the language for all the propositions and statements from the candidates. It is provided, I believe, by a coalition of different groups. The Clean Elections Commission has a piece of it. The Secretary of State's office has a piece of it. And the language is usually litigated, particularly in controversial sorts of times, like as far as Prop 139 is concerned.
Sure. And just to clarify, I think when you said earlier, as Secretary of State running the campaign, you mean you're overseeing elections in the state. So in your official capacity, you take no opinion. Just want to clarify. Yes, I don't want to confuse
and I appreciate that. We're, you know, as an elected Democrat, I have an opinion, but I also have my official duty, which we can talk about that stuff if you'd like.
We're going to get to some of that in a moment. But are you surprised by the historic amount of support for this ballot measure? Do you think it indicates success in November and potentially success for your fellow Democrats who are on the ballot?
I'm not surprised by the support, but the support is eye-popping. I mean, we had well over 800,000 Arizonans who signed off, and of the valid signatures, that's through all of the scrutiny, we had 577,000 plus as a certified number. And that's an enormous number. That's close to 1 in every 7 Arizona voters has a valid signature on those petitions. That's a huge amount of support, and it is absolutely more than just bipartisan. Independents, no labels, libertarians, Greens, Republicans, and Democrats, we're all signing off on this. They'd all like to see a return to something pre-Dobbs as far as the Roe v. Wade issue and abortion access is concerned.
I mean, your state's gotten pretty used to having high-stakes elections every 2 years, but this ballot measure has the potential to really now help Vice President Harris's chances, Ruben Gallego's chances in the Senate race, right?
Absolutely no question about it. This is going to energize the base of folks who are looking to have some freedom. And we've seen Carrie Lake, who's running again. She's running against Congressman Ruben Gallego for the U.S. Senate seat. She's really not doing well in the polls, and that's because folks are tired of, the misrepresentations that she's put out there. So we'll see what happens in that race. But as far as the vice president's race is concerned, and again, I'm speaking as an elected Democrat, not as the Secretary of State now, the Trump-Vance skibbity campaign is really going off the rails now that the vice president is the Democratic nominee. And I think she and Governor Walz are absolutely going to give Arizona a good run for our money. We had a record attendance at the rally late last week. The electricity in the room was palpable. And you can feel the excitement out on the street. It is the talk of the town, not just here in the greater Phoenix area, but across the Grand Canyon State, and not just among folks who pay a lot of attention. We're hearing it from people who do not pay a lot of attention to politics. I am certainly in my own experience, and I think it's a great thing for the country.
I want to ask you 2 election management questions, since that is part of what you oversee. You had primaries in your state July 30th. That's what set the Senate race that we were just discussing. You're holding an event tomorrow to live stream the official canvass or the review of those results. You've also held training sessions this year, and we reported on it here on CBS about the concerns with deep fakes and making sure that elections officials in the state are familiar with how artificial intelligence could be used to sway voters or to dissuade voters from voting. By doing all this, are you finding that it's actually helping explain the potential dangers to voters? Is it assuaging the concerns of those who perhaps were skeptical 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think the preparations that we began in January of 2023 when I first took office are paying off in spades. Our March presidential preference election went off completely without a hitch. And while it is a human endeavor and we always see a couple of issues, the July 30th primary election here in Arizona also was pretty solid. And part of that has to do with the fact that we've prepared folks. Now, that deep fake of me that you see was created as part of a first in the nation AI tabletop training that we did for election workers and elections officials across the state. But we didn't just do it for those folks. We did it for the media. We did it for law enforcement because, as I indicated to you not too long ago, we are all in this together. We've all got to look with a discerning eye at the information that we're taking in. And, you'll hear it here first. We may see the return of newspapers in print because it's really tough to see what's real and what's not real when artificial intelligence from the generative side is really doing such a great job and getting better.
Well, Adrian Fontes is Arizona Secretary of State. We thank you for joining us now. I suspect we'll talk again before Election Day and beyond. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Vice presidential candidate Tim Walz says he's, quote, damn proud of his military record after Republican criticism. Why his rival in the race, J.D. Vance, says the Democratic VP nominee lied about his service. Stay with us. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. In a original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here. We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way. We take you places. We teach you new things. And we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to America Decides. Both of the vice presidential running mates are hitting the campaign trail today. Senator J.D. Vance is speaking in the battleground state of Michigan, while Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota attends fundraisers in Denver and Boston. He is defending his military record after criticism from some Republicans, including Vance.
I am damn proud of my service to this country. And I firmly believe you should never denigrate another person's service record. To anyone brave enough to put on that uniform for our great country, including my opponent, I just have a few simple words. Thank you for your service and sacrifice.
Katrina Kaufman joins us now. Katrina, great to see you. Can you remind us what exactly are Republicans saying about how he's presented his service record?
Ed, Republicans, and particularly J.D. Vance, have been trying to say that Walz has exaggerated his military service record and accused him of stolen valor. Vance has also said that Walz essentially left his National Guard unit before they deployed to Iraq. Vance is trying to frame that as though he was trying to avoid going, but from our reporting and records, we've seen that he gave his notice before that unit ever even received notice that they were supposed to go to Iraq. And the reason he decided to leave is because he wanted to run for office. That is when he ran for Congress, and it was really the beginning of his political journey.
So Walz has been campaigning across the country this week. He's working west to east. What exactly is the pitch as he meets with voters across the country?
So Walz had his first solo campaign events yesterday. The first one was in front of a major labor union. And one point he made to them is that he is the first union member on a presidential ticket since Ronald Reagan. And he's really pitching himself and Kamala Harris as champions of workers and of the middle class. He told stories both at that event and at a fundraiser that was later in Newport Beach about how she used to work at McDonald's when she was growing up. And then he contrasted that to Donald Trump and asked if anyone could imagine Donald Trump making a McFlurry. And both audiences laughed at that. Another story that I've heard Walz tell over and over again since he began this campaign is about he and his wife's journey with IVF, their struggle having a child, and their daughter Hope was actually at the fundraiser yesterday. But he's really trying to emphasize that he thinks it is a woman's right to choose, that he believes in the right to be able to have IVF and abortion. And then something he brought up twice yesterday as well was Project 2025. This is, of course, something that Trump has really been trying to distance himself from. But Walz mentioned his background as a football coach. And what he said is that a football coach knows that if you make a playbook, then you use it. And he's really trying to communicate that he thinks that if Trump gets back into office, this is going to be the playbook for the next administration.
All right, Katrina Kaufman tracking Tim Walz as he continues his first solo week out on the campaign trail. Thank you so much. Now, it's been a tough summer of primaries for members of the House progressive group known as the Squad. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar stopped the losing skid last night, however, defeating former council member Don Samuels in her Minnesota district's Democratic primary. It was a rematch after Omar topped Samuels back in 2022. This time round, she won by more than 10 points. Meanwhile, former NBA basketball player and Trump ally Royce White secured Minnesota's Republican Senate nomination. He'll face off against incumbent Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar in November. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. I'm Jerika Duncan in for John Dickerson. Torrential rain and widespread power outages in Puerto Rico. We're tracking Hurricane Ernesto, its damage, and where the storm is headed next. Overseas,